Hello and welcome to this edition on Career Path Exploration. My name is Jojo Dawadi and I'm currently a senior at North Penn High School. On this ongoing series, we will be talking with community members in a variety of careers about how they arrived at their respective careers and what advice they can offer students on how to be successful no matter what career they chose or what path they chose in high school. Joining me today is Michael Olinik, who is the owner of a law firm and currently practice law in, I believe, California. Mr. Olinik, can you start off a little bit by telling us about yourself, what you do currently, and a little bit of your background, please?
Yes, I grew up in Montgomery Township and was a part of the North Penn School District from kindergarten through graduation. After I graduated from North Penn, I went on to the College of William and Mary for 4 years, where I had a major in government and in economics. And then after that, I came back to Pennsylvania to go to law school at Villanova University, where I graduated in 2009. I then became a member of the Pennsylvania Bar and practiced at Reed Smith in Philadelphia for 3 years before I moved out to California and took the California Bar. I clerked for a federal magistrate judge for a little while, then joined another law firm. And then in 2016, I opened up my own law firm here in San Diego.
And when you were a kid in high school or even middle school, was law a trajectory you have always kind of thought of, or did that just kind of happen?
My passion for law did begin in middle school. I always had an interest in social studies, going through eighth grade and learning about American history then. And that transferred into high school where I took AP American history and then AP government. So I had always been on that trajectory. I was also interested in science too, but in the end, even though I had great teachers like Mr. Plumette, I didn't want to do math anymore. So I started going down the path of social studies and government, and then that eventually led me to choose to go to law school.
When you went through your undergraduate program, what did you major in? Did you major in pre-law by any chance?
William and Mary did not have a pre-law program, so I majored in government. Most other schools call it political science, but William and Mary is so old that they still call it government. Um, and I also tacked on economics as a side. I guess I didn't completely abandon math. Um, because I just took a few introductory courses on economics and found it interesting, and that led to another major as well. Um, but when I entered political science, it was towards an eye towards going to law school.
hmm So I know it's very interesting that you went through the political science program because I know that I have personal friends of mine who also want to be a lawyer like yourself, and they looked at a couple colleges this year and they're seniors, so they're going through the college application process, and they kind of crossed off certain schools depending on whether they had pre-law or not. And I'm wondering, why didn't you still go to choose to William and Mary, even though they didn't have a pre-law program? Was it the campus or what specifically?
It was a combination of things. I did fall in love with the campus when I went. I thought it was neat that it was in historic Williamsburg. Um, it's funny though, pre-law programs are one thing, but when you actually get into law school, what major you take in undergrad isn't really as important as the skills you learn in undergrad and even in high school. It's really the skills that are more of an interest to entering and being successful in a law program. And those skills include the ability to write well, the ability to think critically about questions, and the ability to be able to understand complex arguments and respond in a reasonable manner. So while pre-law does give you a heads up on understanding the law content, you both have to understand the actual content, but you also need to have the skills
Mhm.
to be able to be successful. And that really starts with writing. I think back all the way to fifth grade in elementary school at Gwen Nor, and teachers demanded that you write your answers to essay questions in complete sentences.
Uh-huh.
Thinking back, it was only 2 lines, but starting that process of understanding, okay, this is what I'm answering, and I have to explain what I'm answering first and then answer the question. That's really where the start of writing and understanding complex arguments begins.
And backtracking a little bit, because you mentioned elementary school, I'm curious, in middle school or high school, did you do any clubs that pertain to law, like mock trial by any chance?
Yes, I was a member of the mock trial club in high school. I actually wasn't selected as a lawyer participant. I was a witness participant, but we still had a lot of fun. And I enjoyed the class. And that was really my first introduction to what a law and what trial was, and my first visit to the courthouse.
So, can you talk about what doing mock trial in high school kind of taught you like specifically in the field of law?
Um, Looking back at mock trial, it's really nice because you have the ability to work with a group and you're presented with a situation.
Mhm.
And we were led by a attorney who was able to explain to us what the court process was. And so you get familiar not only with what happens in a courtroom, but also you're taught to think about, well, what questions make sense here? What do you actually have to prove? Because the whole point of the mock trial is that you have to learn how to present the factual background of the case by asking the right questions,
Mhm.
so that an independent third party who hasn't been poring over this information for 3 years or 3 months like you have would be able to understand it. So it really not only gives you the introduction to what the courtroom is like, but it also shows you what the process is behind the thinking and how you get to that final presentation. And really, those are skills that are applicable in whatever career you go to, because there always be presentations.
So, would you highly urge any student in high school currently who is a 10th grader, 11th grader, or maybe it's too late if you're a 12th grader, considering the time and the schedule we're in. Would you encourage any student who has some level of interest in law to go through and experience what mock trial is like?
I would encourage it because it is that first experience. And if you come out hating it, maybe that also will change your career perspective. I encourage everyone to engage in as many activities as you can, especially because being a part of the North Penn community, you have the opportunity to engage in many different activities. Um, while it's not necessarily, of course, just like pre-law, it's not necessarily necessary, but um, it is something that will give you a leg up, start your understanding, and most importantly, allow you to discover whether it's something you really like or something that might put you off.
I see. And fast forwarding now, I realize we jumped from college to high school back. Now we're going back to college. When
Mhm.
you got your bachelor's degree from William and Mary and you started applying to law schools, what steps did you have to take? What requirements, what tests did you have to take? What was it like from transitioning to undergrad to graduate?
Yes, I actually went straight from undergrad to law school. So my application process began while I was still in law school. And so it basically began 2 years before I graduated. I met with my professor who was my mentor, Christine Nemechek, and we started discussing possible career paths, why I would want to become a lawyer. After I decided I was going to apply to law school, I had to take the LSAT, which is a test that's standardized like the SAT, but it's a completely different test. It has three components, which, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, were critical thinking, logic games, and one other test component that I forget at the time. Um, but that's basically the test you take. And then it's an open application process. It's very similar to college then, where you have to submit your essays and you have to submit your applications and that fun stuff. So one of the different things about law school than undergrad, though, is that you also have to have kind of an eye to where you're going to practice in the future. Because some law schools, depending on which ones you apply to, are more regional and people normally work in the area, whereas other law schools are national and people get jobs throughout the country. So if you know there's a particular place you want to practice in, it might actually be more advantageous to go to a regional law school where there's connections throughout the legal community to that law school that could help you get job opportunities, or just the normal connections that help everyone advance their career, rather than a more prestigious school that might be further away from where you ultimately want to live.
Mhm. So is lawyer the type of job where you need to, so right after law school, you need to, well, first let's talk about the LSAT. What's that like? Is that, or the bar exam, when you graduate from law school, is that something all lawyers have to take?
um, to become an official lawyer, yes, you have to take it, but a lot of people choose not to become a lawyer after law school, um, which is a very relevant and fine career path. A lot of people decide they want to work in government instead, or some people decide they want to work in law enforcement or with the FBI and need that JD degree as a prerequisite to that. Um, but if you want to become an attorney, you have to pass the bar exam. The
Mhm.
bar exam is different in each state. So you really have to uh, decide where you want to live and where you want to practice after that. Different states have different requirements. And then some states allow you to transfer into them if you practice for so many years, while
Mhm.
other states always require you to take the bar exam before you can practice. So it can feel oppressive, graduating law school and having to figure out, basically plan your next 5 or 10 years of your life. But each law school offers guidance to that. So not really something seniors should perhaps be worried about now, because there'll be plenty of time to figure that out as you go.
So, just out of curiosity, hypothetically, if I went to law school in Pennsylvania, but I knew for a fact I was going to go live in Texas, would I be able to take the bar exam in Texas, even though I didn't go to school in Texas? Or do I have to take some level of an education, career path in Texas and then take the bar exam?
No, and I am a prime example of that. I went to school in Pennsylvania and then decided to move to California. Um, my previous education didn't limit me from taking the bar exam in California, because the ABA has specifically certified schools that are national, and I think almost all states allow you to take the bar exam if you've graduated from one of those. Again, the rules change from state to state, but I went to law school in um, Pennsylvania and then was able to take the California bar exam. They didn't care that it already passed Pennsylvania, but so I had to take the full thing over again. So it's just like I wasn't even a lawyer yet. So you are able to move. California is not one of the states that have reciprocity, which is where if you've been practicing, you can enter it. So I would have had to take the bar exam no matter what. But what basically just like there's prep courses for the SAT and for the LSAT, there are prep courses for the bar exams that are geared to the specific bar exam. So that actually is what you do during the summer after you graduate from law school. The bar exams are typically at the end of July. And if you graduate in May, you take maybe 2 weeks off and then you start in earnest going to bar prep classes every day.
Mm-hmm. And when you finally graduate, you pass the bar exam, and you're a certified lawyer, is that the profession where you automatically, well, not, I don't want to use the word automatically, but when a job opportunity comes, do you become a lawyer, or is that something you have to work your way up in a firm?
Firms, once you pass the bar exam and you're licensed by the state, you're an attorney, you're a lawyer, and you can do whatever you want. The way law firms are set up, if it's a larger law firm with more people, you generally start out as an associate attorney, and then there's junior associate, mid-level associate, senior associate, and then you enter, if you wish, as a partner, and then there are different levels of partner too. But um, as an attorney, you can also go out and start your own firm and be your own boss and fly under your own heading, as they say. And
Mhm.
so you're immediately the top person if you open up your own law firm. So it really depends on what you want to pursue. And like I said, a lot of people decide to work for the government and they become DAs and public defenders
Mhm.
or in-house counsel. And those are other career paths people can take. But if you're a DA, you're a DA. You might just be doing low-level crimes. You won't be trying murders anytime soon.
Mhm.
But you're an attorney once you're licensed by the state.
Okay. And when you became a attorney for a firm, what's the most thing you would enjoy about your job?
The things I most enjoyed, I'll go back to the days when I was a fresh new lawyer working at a big law firm in Philadelphia. Um, I always enjoyed the times where I could actually generally help people. And a lot of that came working in a big firm as a new associate. You don't have much power about what you work on and what you do, but I was able to do. I'm sorry for my cat.
Okay.
Uh, yes, quarantine. My hair is askew and my cat's jumping in. Um, I was able to do pro bono cases. So I was able to help out poor people in Philadelphia get legal representation when they needed it. I know in one case, I had a client who faced forfeiture of her house because someone she let rent a room had drugs and the cops wanted to seize her entire house from her. And we were able to let her keep her house, which was very important to me. And I was also able to work on a death penalty case for someone in Pennsylvania who was convicted of murder.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of circumstances in that case the jurors didn't consider when they uh, issued the death penalty. And we were able to show the prosecutor that the circumstances in that case didn't warrant the death penalty, and they eventually agreed to stop seeking the death penalty. So to me, those are the most important cases where I can actually help people who really need it, because a lot of the work is can be people fighting about money.
Mhm.
And while that's what may pay the bills, that's not always the most fulfilling work.
Mhm. And are there cases where you get to decide whether you want to defend or not, or do you just randomly get assigned a case to defend?
When you're in a big firm, you don't have that opportunity to choose as much, which is why I opened up my own firm so that I do have the ability to choose whether or not to be plaintiff or defendant. If you're in the civil sphere, they're plaintiff and defendant, just like if you're in the criminal sphere, it's prosecutor and defendant. So you obviously, if you're the DA, you're only going to be on the prosecution, and if you're the public defender, you're only defending crimes. In the civil world, there it's more free flow, and you can choose whether to do only plaintiffs or only defendants or do a mix. It's really can be up to you, mapping up your own career. And when you have your own place, you can pick what cases you take and which ones you don't. And when you're working with the firm, it's really more what work needs to be done. Okay, you're on this case.
Okay, and when you worked for that big firm, like you mentioned in Philadelphia when you were a freshman attorney, were you ever assigned a case that you didn't want to be a part of? Did that ever happen to you?
Um, as a young associate, your attitude is mostly, I'm very happy to be working for you. What can I do?
I see.
Um, if I ever had a moral objection to the case, yes, I could have addressed it the same one, and I would have been transferred off of that case.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of the times, your job as an attorney is to look at the facts and be frank. And you can go and tell the client, um, or if you're a young attorney, have your boss tell the client, look, your case isn't very good and we recommend settling. And really, as an attorney, that's really the power that you have, because you're looking to have the best result for your client. Sometimes that result's going to be good, sometimes that result's going to be bad. It's your job to frankly inform the client about what's going on, what prospects they have, and their best course. So really, if you have a case where you're just like, this is awful, then you have to have the ability and skills to explain to the client why it's awful and why settlement might be the best. Ultimately, it's up to the client whether or not to go forward or not. But it's your job to inform them of the situation and let them know what the best course of action is.
And would you say when you have you ever had to have that kind of hard conversation with a client where you were just like, "Hey, this is these are the cards you're dealt with, and this is the only option or the best option for you, and unfortunately, it's not a good option."
Yes, all the time. Basically, we have a justice system, and there could be political arguments about whether the results of that are justice or not, and I'm not going to get into that today. But in the end, there's always a lot of emotions in cases, and cases of all types. If it's two big corporations going against each other, or if it's a family dispute in divorce court, it's going to be emotionally charged. People are going to take things personally. But at the end, as a lawyer, you're here to remind them, look, at the end, you're confronted with a problem and you have to think through this logically, try to divorce yourself of the emotion and just look at what the best course of action is. In the end, it's ultimately a business decision. You can pay me tens of thousands of dollars to fight this, but if it's something that we're ultimately going to lose and you can get out of by paying $5,000 today, sometimes it's better to bite the bullet and just get it done. So really, there's the law part, but there's also the counselor and the unemotional, boring guy, for lack of a better term, that has to bring them to reality. That's why lawyers are sometimes called counselors, because a
Mhm.
lot of times we serve as kind of therapists and whatnot. Because of the attorney-client privilege, clients can tell us more than they can even tell some people in their own companies. Um, and that would generally be protected depending on the circumstances, which we won't get into now. But yeah, being a lawyer is more than arguing in court. You also have to be a counselor and be able to work with people.
And I'm assuming a lot of paperwork.
Yes, the paperwork isn't something to be taken lightly. I know back in high school, I thought a 10-page paper was an absolute monster of a task, and now I've done 10-page briefs in a day. So yeah, there can be a lot of writing. It does depend on what type of law you do. If you want to be a transactional lawyer, you're mostly doing deals and you're not arguing in court. So it's all paperwork and all negotiating over sentences. If you want to be a litigator, that's more court time, but then you're the one writing the legal briefs and preparing for jury trials and all that, which is a different stack of paperwork. So yeah, everything right now is going digital though, so offices aren't as crammed and it's a little easier to work with on the computer, but reading and writing is still the most fundamental part of being an attorney.
And so knowing all that you know now, what advice would you give to someone in high school or even your younger self regarding your profession?
I would say try to get involved with a law office or programs such as the mock trial as early as possible. A lot of my friends in law school started out working as law clerks at law firms over the summer, or even just reaching out to an attorney's office. I know a lot of attorneys are busy, but a lot of us are also willing to be mentors and at least discuss issues with people interested in entering the law, and really getting exposed to the actual day-to-day practice of law is probably the most valuable thing you can do, because even coming out of law school, you really don't know what it's like to be a lawyer until you're actually being a lawyer.
So as a high school student, if I was really interested in interning at a law office, but I have no background or no written qualifications of being in the law profession, should that prohibit me from at least reaching out to the office and asking for an internship?
um you use the word internship. That scene has shifted in recent years, depending on what state you're in, because internships used to be able to be free, but now unless it's for course credit, you have to be paid. So unfortunately, free internships are harder to come by these days. But if you have a connection to a law firm, and I would highly suggest looking to see if law firms are hiring law clerk positions over the summer. You might only be doing filing and whatnot, but being in a law office and seeing how it operates and starting to understand the different portions of a case help immensely. I did not do that when I was young. It obviously didn't stop me from being a lawyer, um, but my other friends have had success going down that path.
Mhm. And since you own a firm, I'm assuming that your everyday challenges are different from somebody who works in a firm as opposed to someone who's kind of the owner of a firm. So when you were first starting off as an attorney, what were some regular everyday challenges you faced then? And then what are some everyday challenges you face now?
When I first started working at a big firm, the most challenging part was discovering what it meant to actually be a lawyer, to understand how the cases work, to understand the different types of relationships between uh, not only the attorneys in the firm, but the attorneys and your client. And then jumping in and learning how to deal with attorneys from the other firm. Because all of a sudden in law school, you go through, okay, you're on one side, maybe you have mock trials. But then all of a sudden you're in the real world and you're negotiating with an attorney who's zealously representing the other side. So it's really more learning about all the interactions and relationships between all the parties. Um, Really, it's hard to learn to be a lawyer until you're actually practicing. So no matter whether you have your own firm or whether you're working for another firm, really the first few years are just learning how to be a lawyer. Um, Challenges I have now running my own firm is I have to find clients, um, because I need the clients to have the work to get the money. The way I handle that now, I do mostly contract work. Um, I have chosen a path where I don't have to go get the clients because that's not what I'm good at. um, and instead, I do work for other firms. So if other firms have motions that need to be written, or other types of briefing, I will go ahead and do that work for them and then get paid by the law firm. And the other law firm worries about the client relationships. So really your career path is really in your hands. I've chosen to go through this model where I have fewer clients that I directly represent, but I work with other firms and help get them results for their clients, and then I get paid by the firm.
Okay. Well, Mr. Olinik, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate, and I appreciate your time to offer career advice to students in the North Penn School District from 7th to 12th grade. We always kind of have like a chance for the interviewee to kind of give a closing statement to everybody. Would you like to give one?
Yes, sure. Thank you. One of the most valuable things I experienced while at North Penn was just the diversity of the student body. That is not a diversity that I experienced at my other schools later in life. And I really look back to that diversity as a defining moment in helping me become who I am today, because the diversity from economic backgrounds to educational backgrounds really helped me make friends and understand different circumstances that really you don't appreciate or even know about until you're 20 years into the world. Um, so really, I suggest that everyone take advantage of just experiencing the diversity we have in North Penn and taking advantage of all the programmings. Like, even though I became a lawyer, I did take astronomy my senior year so I could hang out in the planetarium. And then I took the same course again in college and got over 100% because I had already taken the course at North Penn. So while we're all focused on careers in the future, also take a moment to take courses you might enjoy and just take in the North Penn experience while you're there.
Thanks again, Mr. Olinik. And to everybody watching, you can all watch all of our episodes of the Career Pathway Exploration Series on the North Penn Television YouTube channel at youtube.com.np or youtube.com/NPTV. I'm Jojo Dawadi. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for watching this with us today, and we'll see you next time on the Career Pathway Explorations.